Today I'm going to show you how to fully delete a 2010 to 2012 6.7 Cummins. Quick disclaimer, I make these videos for anyone in the world to watch. In a lot of places, they don't care if you delete your truck, but in some places it's illegal. So if you're thinking about doing this, first, look up your local laws and make sure you stay in accordance with them. If this is illegal where you live, I don't recommend you do it. So the kit we're using is from a company called the Diesel Dudes. I'll put a link in the description if you want to check it out for yourself. You have the option for EFI Live tuning or Easy Link. This truck, we're doing Easy Link. I prefer it over EFI Live just because it's more modern and it's much easier to use. There are also a few more features with Easy Link compared to EFI Live. You have the choice between delete pipes and a full 5-inch exhaust. So this truck is getting a full 5-inch exhaust. Here's the Easy Link auto agent that comes with the kit. There's a switch to change between power levels. We have an EGR delete kit. And the kit also comes with transmission tuning built into the tunes if you have the 68 RFE transmission, which most likely you will. So step one, we always want to tune the truck first before we remove anything off of it. So I got my auto agent here and we're going to program this truck. If you got the EFI Live option, I will link a video that I made on a 2013 to 2018 Cummins where we used EFI Live. And the only difference that's going to be between those newer trucks and the 2010 to 2012 models is on the 2010 to 2012 models, you have to flash a boot patch first. So basically you have to flash a file onto the truck first, and then you flash the actual tune file on. So you just program it twice. But like I said, this truck we're doing Easy Link. So we're going to start by popping the hood and we're going to put a battery charger on. So we got a battery charger on. I recommend somewhere around 5 to 15 amps. This one is set at 10 amps. Now you're going to download the Easy Link Auto Agent app and create an account. And then you're going to plug in the Auto Agent to the OBD plug, just like that. Make sure it's directly connected to the factory OBD plug and not like some splitter or GPS system or anything like that. And then you're going to enter into the app. I'm going to screen record the process for you and just voice over it so I can tell you what to do. And put the keys in, turn it to run. Don't start it, just turn it to run. Shut off your climate, make sure the radio's off, just to save some power. So first you wanna go to Wi-Fi, and you should find the Easy Link should pop up here. We'll just turn it off and on again. There it is right there, Easy Link. Connect to that. Then you're gonna find the Easy Link Auto Agent app. Here it is at the top left. Open that up. Now, usually something will pop up saying link this vehicle to whatever, and you hit link. I don't see anything here. I'm just going to go to vehicle, ECU profiles, and we're going to have to link this one manually. There, that's what should usually pop up right there. If this doesn't pop up, you have to link the vehicle manually like I was just doing, and you just enter in the dieseltext@gmail.com. But this popped up, so you're just going to select link. Hit continue. For tire pressure, it's up to you. I'm just going to say stock OEM. Next. Tire size, if you have oversized tires, you can select whatever size, but we're going to hit stock on this truck. Next. And then I'm just going to say Diesel Dudes Delete Kit. If you have any other mods, you can put it there, but if you're just doing a stock delete, this is all you need. Hit done. All those tunes loading at the bottom, those are all different profiles we can put onto the truck. Look, there's tons of them. So I'm going to go back here. So if we go back to dashboard, this is likely where you probably are. But if you see in the top left menu here, we're going to open that up. And then you go down to vehicle. And then here you see your year, make, model. You'll see your VIN number. And then hit the ECU profiles. I'm just going to swipe up and refresh this because there should be tunes in here. There they are. There's poor reception in the shop. And because I'm not hooked up to Wi-Fi, it's hard getting cell service in here. So that's why it's taking a little while. But here are the different tunes. So at the bottom, see this one all the way at the bottom that says 10 to 12 Cummins patch file, load first. We must do that first. So click on it. And this is what we're going to put on first. So hit the little cloud in the top right. It's going to download the tune to your phone. Yours will probably be faster. Like I said, the service is really bad in the shop if I'm not hooked to Wi-Fi. I'm actually going to open the door in the shop a little bit just so we get better service. There we go. So now we're going to hit install. It's going to say this ECU profile will update the following modules, ECM. We're going to click proceed. It tells you to turn the key off. So just turn the key off, hit continue, turn the key back on, hit continue. And now it's going to program the truck. So just let it do its thing. Try not to open or close any doors. Don't touch anything. Don't hit any buttons. Don't unplug anything on the truck. Just let it do its thing. And this will likely take probably 10 to 15, maybe even 20 minutes. All right, we're at 99%, almost finished. All right, now it's telling us to turn the ignition off. So do that, hit continue. turn it back to run, hit continue. It said it was completed successfully. Let's go. Okay, perfect. Now we're not going to start the truck or anything. We are just going to go back to ECU profiles, and we're going to actually pick a tune to put on this truck. So there's a couple tunes down there that are, if you like, fixed vane turbos, which means if you got rid of the VGT and you put an aftermarket non-VGT turbo on, but we're not going to do that. Most likely you're going to pick the year of truck you have. So if you have a 10 to 11, go into that folder. We have a 12, so we're going to hit 12 Ram custom tunes right here. Now, if you just want to program a single tune and don't want to do the switch, you can hit single tunes. And if you want with or without transmission tuning, so if you want with transmission tuning, you have different power levels right here. But we're going to do a switch on this one, so I'm going to go back, and we're going to go back again, and we're going to go 12 Ram shift on the fly tunes because this is a 2012. And the switch we have is a CCV switch. If you have a switch that plugs into the OBD port, which we don't have, you would select OBD. But ours is going to plug into the CCV sensor, so we're going to select CCV. So I'm just looking at these different tune options. So they're all 0 to 180 horsepower. Started from the top with transmission tuning. Then there's another one here. It looks like it says the same thing, except for it's version 4.6. So that's probably, actually, I'd probably do the top one because that's 4.6.1. Then if you go down there to the third tune here, and you can actually click on it. So if I click on this tune, it will say, kind of give you your power levels and talk about it a little bit. Talk about the transmission relearn process. The LBF, where it says added LBF, that means low boost fueling, which means at low boost, it will add a little more fuel, which means it might be a little bit more of a smoky tune. We're not going to put that tune on this truck. And the bottom tune is a hiss tune, which means the truck will hiss more at an idle. If I open this up, it just says hiss idle. We don't want this truck. This is an old guy that owns this truck, so he's probably not going to want to hiss. So for this tune, I'm going to go to the top one that says 12 Ram CMDL. I think that's the ECM code. And then ER means emission removed. Shift on the fly, 0 to 180 horsepower with transmission tuning version 4.6.1. So the top one, I'm going to click on that. And then in the top right, I'm going to hit the little cloud to download it. And then I'm just going to hit install, and we're going to do this process all over again. So hit proceed, turn the key off, hit continue, turn the key back on, hit continue, and then just let it program again like you just did. It says installation was completed successfully. Let's go. So we have tuned this truck. So I will note that if you want to go back here and say for some reason you want to try a different tune, you don't have to load the boot patch anymore. You only have to load the boot patch the first time you tune the truck. So you could pick any one of these tunes, like this one, for example. You could download it and you could program it. It's easy as that. So we're going to go back, exit right out of this. If you go down to functions, you'll see a couple things you can mess with, like idle shutdown. I guess you could run, I don't know. You can mess around with that. Tire pressure monitoring system, tire size. Like this is where you can adjust that stuff. Toggle fog lights allows you to toggle your front fog lights. I think you can run them with your high beams then in that case. But we're gonna go back. If we go back to this top menu and we go to dashboard, this is where you can see your live data. You can go to gauges up here or graphs. We're going to go back to this menu though. And if you look at DTC, if you click this one, it's going to read if there's any codes. Shouldn't be any codes. If you do have codes, you know, you can clear codes right here. But yeah, go back to dashboard, and that's basically it for the Easy Link. So once the truck is tuned, you don't have to leave this plugged in. You can unplug it and just leave it in your truck or leave it in your garage, wherever. And just to show you the different switches, so this is the switch we're using. It's the CCV switch. And this is an OBD style switch, which I thought only worked with EFI Live, so I'm surprised that Easy Link even gave an option for it. But like I said, this is the CCV style, and that's the tune that we selected. So regardless of if you did a single tune or a shift on the fly tune, we just want to confirm that the tune worked. So remove the battery charger from the truck, and we're going to unplug the EGR and the throttle valve. So for the EGR, unplug this, and unplug that. For these, you just use a pick and pop it like that. Then you can unplug it. And then the throttle valve is this thing right here. So it's kind of hard to unplug. I usually use a mirror and stick it back there. And I reach around with this hand and I unplug the sensor. And if you can see down here, there, I got it unplugged. So that guy, these two, and then that throttle valve on the backside, They stay unplugged no matter what. You have to leave them unplugged if you're running delete tuning. When you delete a truck, you have to tune it and you have to replace the exhaust, but you don't have to actually remove the EGR. You can leave the EGR on the engine, but you have to unplug those 4 plugs like I just showed you. But now we just want to start the truck and make sure we don't have any engine codes. So the truck seems to be running good. Make sure you have throttle. I'd let it run for about a minute, shut it off, and then start it up again. And as long as you have no codes, you're good to go. So if you just installed a single tune and you confirmed that you got no engine lights, everything's good, you can move on to the exhaust removal. But since we did the shift on the fly tune, we got to install this switch. So unwind your switch and we basically have to get these 3 wires through the firewall into the engine bay. So in the engine bay, I cut a little slit right there in that main grommet with all these wires coming through. Then in the cab, the grommet is up there, and I'm gonna cut another little slit just in the top. Be very careful not to cut any of the actual wires that run through that grommet. Then I have an unwound coat hanger, and then I fed the coat hanger through the grommet, and we should see it on the inside. Yeah. Right there. Then carefully tape the wires to the coat hanger, and you can gently pull them through into the engine bay. Nice and easy. There they are. Perfect. So now we got to insert the wires into this plug. Now this is the top side of the plug like this. And as you can see, this one, they actually put some colored dots on it to make it easier. But yeah, you're going to have your plug orientated like this, and you're going to insert the red on the right, the black in the middle, and then the white wire on the left side. If you have a kit that has a purple wire instead of a white, I believe that you just put it on the left side as well. So when you're inserting these, just try to do it with this flat side up, and you're going to insert it. And you're going to actually hear a little click. Just like that. And then you give it a little tug. It doesn't come out. It's like that. So that is what they should look like once they're in. And if you look at this side, you'll see they're all evenly protruding out of the red clip. Now what you want to do is you actually want to grab a screwdriver and push this red clip in a little bit. So I'm going to try to let you guys see what I'm doing here. Just like that. See how much more those prongs protrude? And now this is ready to go. So this is actually going to plug into your CCV plug, which is that guy right there. We're going to unplug it and plug it in. But just make sure you have enough cable pulled out here to go over there. And obviously I would run mine underneath all this stuff and make it neat. Once you're happy with how much wires you've pulled into the engine bay, we're going to put this loom on that comes with the kit. So this is how I do it. I get it started kind of like that. And then I just hold my finger here and I just feed it on. And you want the loom to go all the way and stick into the firewall a little bit. And there we go, it goes all the way into the firewall there. I cut off the excess. So now we're gonna unplug this CCV sensor. Again, it's got one of these stupid red locking tabs. And you can unplug it, maybe. There we go. Turn it around this way. Now grab this new wire and feed it underneath there nice and neat. And you can plug it in. Okay, we plugged it in. I ran mine back behind here over top of the brake booster. So I'm just going to zip tie this new cable nice and neat out of the way of everything. And then we're done in the engine bay. So now back in the cab, we have to mount the switch, which is pretty easy to do. This truck has the bench seat in the front, so I'm gonna have to find a different place to mount it. Usually I mount it kind of here on the ones that have the center console. I think this truck has, look at that. Yeah, so for example, I usually pop this little plastic piece out and that's where I'll mount the switch. If you have it, that's where I would do it. But we're gonna figure out a different place to mount it on this guy. I'm gonna pop this thing out. I think there's just 2 bolts there and then you can pull this thing down. Okay, I got this out, but I'm not really seeing any good places to mount. So I actually took the 3 Torx screws out of here. I'm gonna try to pop this out. These plastic upholstery tools come in handy. I can't do it with one hand. I'm trying hard, but you just have to figure it out on your own. Okay, I popped this out and I'm seeing a really good spot right in this open area where we can mount that switch. We could probably either mount it this way or mount it from the top like that. It's kind of your choice. As long as there's enough room for the back of the switch back here where it's not going to hit anything. And again, if you have the center console, I'd probably just put it in that little thing I showed you before because it's just way easier to mount it there. So I actually put the leftover loom on the wires here and I ran it up here where it's not touching anything. And I think I want to mount it right like that. It seems like there's the perfect amount of space for it to go right there. So regardless of where you're mounting your switch, you need to grab a 3/8 drill bit. And I kind of just held this switch in here just to kind of mark where I want it. And then I'm going to drill a hole in there. And there we go. I got a 3/8 hole drilled in there. Now grab some little side cutters and snip that little kind of nipple off nice and flush. You don't need it. This thing right there, just snip it off. Just like that. I snapped her off. Now take this nut off the switch. Take that little washer off too. But keep that washer, like that metal one, in place. See, it has that little detent. That selects how many positions this switch has. If that falls out, you have to make sure you put it in the number 5 position, or this switch will have more than 5 positions, and you want it to have 5. And as you can see, it fits perfectly in there. And now you can put that little washer on and then a nut and tighten it up. There's also this sticker you have to put it behind the nut if you want it. I personally don't use the sticker. I think they kind of look tacky. But just double check you have 5 positions. So all the way to the left is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and no more. Now grab this knob and the little Allen key and loosen the set screw. And then you can slide this knob over top of the switch and you can tighten it up. Very nice. I love it. So now I'm going to put this back together, put that on. Make sure you zip tie the excess cable out of the way. If you put yours over there, then yeah, just put it all back together. Your switch is installed and we can move on. And here's the finished product if you want to see what it looks like. Bada bang, bada boom. On to the next. All right, so now we are going to tackle the exhaust. So I have the truck up on a lift. If you don't have a lift, you can just drive it up on some ramps on the ground. But basically, we just have to remove the stock exhaust off the truck. Now, if you got the delete pipes, you're going to reuse the factory tailpipe. If you got the 5-inch exhaust, you're going to replace the whole entire thing. So don't exactly quote me on this. You probably want to pull your delete pipes out and measure them. But there's a little muffler back here, and then this is the back of the DPF. I believe right here is where the delete pipes will join up to. So you would just loosen up this clamp and remove all this front stuff. And then you'll put new delete pipes that will bolt up right here. But like I said, for this truck, we're doing the 5-inch exhaust. So we got to remove the whole entire thing. So the first thing you want to do is find all the wires that come from the stock exhaust. Find where they go to and unplug them. So there's one up there. It looks like there's 2 right here. Moving forward, there's another 2 up there. And then I believe there's one kind of up there somewhere. Yeah, actually this is the wire for it right there, I believe. You can also cut the sensors instead of unplugging them if you know for sure you're never gonna put the exhaust back on. But if you do cut them, make sure you cut them on the exhaust side, like this is what goes to the exhaust, and then just leave them plugged in. Don't cut them on this side where the factory truck harness wiring is. And then there's these 2 metal lines. If you follow them up to the front of the truck, they go to these 2 hoses right there. So you can cut those or you can use some pliers and try to just disconnect them. And now with all the electrical and those 2 hoses disconnected, we can remove this from the truck. So there's 2 ways you can do this. If you want to do it correctly, in case you ever install this back on your truck, you can undo the clamps, you can undo the bolts here, and you can take it out piece by piece. If you don't care about it, you're just gonna scrap the exhaust anyways, you can just grab a Sawzall and just start chopping it out. And again, since we're doing the full exhaust, I'm gonna be removing the tailpipe. If you have the delete pipes, you're gonna reuse this tail section. So this truck, I'm just gonna cut the exhaust out. I'm gonna cut it up there, probably cut it around here, and then probably cut it somewhere around the front here. And then if you look up at the front where this is kind of like your downpipe, there's a V-band clamp up there. So I'm gonna zoom in on it a little bit, but right there. And I would spray that with some kind of penetrating fluid, and you're gonna have to disconnect that V-band clamp, pry it off, and then remove this out of the truck. Also, this hanger on the transmission bell housing gets caught. So you either have to remove these 2 bolts, and then this hanger will come with it, and then put the bolts back in after, or you can grab a Sawzall and just kind of cut it right there. So I use the trusty Sawzall, and I cut it there over the axle. I cut it here at the back of the DPF, and then I cut it right here, kind of at this downpipe, and then I also cut this little bracket right there. Additionally, I also cut these little hoses off just because I'm gonna unclip them out of the holders and just get rid of them. Okay, I pulled those metal lines out. Now I'm gonna start the back and remove this tailpipe. And I always spray the exhaust hangers with some lubricant so they slide out easier. Then you can use your hands, or you can try to use a pry bar to pry off the exhaust hangers. Or these are actually exhaust hanger pliers. They work really good too. All right, I got most of the exhaust out. Now we just have this downpipe left. So grab an 11mm deep socket, and you're going to loosen the nut on this V-band pretty much all the way off. Once you get the nut off, you have to use like a pry bar or something like that and just kind of pop it off. And there it is, the final piece. So now go along and any electrical connectors that are hanging around, just zip tie them neatly out of the way, and we'll move on to installing the new exhaust. You can get your new exhaust all opened up, and I actually laid mine all out in the order it goes. So right here, there's that extra piece. If you have a long box or a mega cab, you're gonna probably use that piece. Sometimes you have to cut it a little bit shorter if you only have a mega cab. And then this kit has the muffler. If you don't have a muffler, you'll just have a piece that is beveled on both ends, meaning it's gonna have this kind of bevel on both sides. So the first piece is this one that goes to the V-band clamp. We're gonna put that one on now. So I got my V-band clamp there. It's just kind of up there ready to go. There's also this gasket. Usually the gasket will stay stuck to the turbo kind of up there. Mine fell off, so I'm just gonna try to hold it up in place when I put this piece of pipe on. But basically you're just gonna push this pipe up against that flange and get the V-band clamp around it and just get it started. You don't have to tighten it all the way, but make sure it's not gonna fall out. It can be a little tricky if you haven't worked with V-band clamps much. Sometimes it's good to have somebody help you put it up in place. Okay, as you can see, we got the V-band started. I still have this a little bit loose so I can kind of move it around a little bit. Now you're gonna come grab this second piece of pipe and slide it over the joint and get this exhaust hanger in place. And as you can see, we slid this new pipe over top of the last one, and we got the exhaust hanger nice in place. Some kits might use this one as well. This one just had a hanger for there, but now we can move on to the next piece. So this truck is just your typical crew cab with a regular box. So I don't think we need to use that. We should just be able to throw this muffler on. And like I said, if you don't have the muffler, you'll just have a straight pipe beveled on both sides. And there we go, we got our muffler on. Now the next pipe is gonna go in both of these hangers. I always like to spray them down so they slide in a little easier. And now you can put this one that goes over top of the axle in. Okay, we got this pipe in, and you kind of wanna try to keep these exhaust hangers kind of as even as possible. You don't want it all twisted one way. And you can see there, it goes over to the back. Now we just have to put the last piece on. If a guy wanted to, you could just axle dump it and just leave this here, put a big old greasy tip on it and call her a day. But unfortunately, we can't do that on this one. And you can see we got her in. I had to struggle with this tailpipe section a little bit. This is the last piece. I kind of had to twist it up there a bit, get this in, and then twist it back. But yeah, look at that. Very nice. Just make sure you're happy with the angle this is coming out, and then we're gonna start tightening it up. So grab some clamps. We're gonna take them apart and build them around the joints. Just take note of this. Notice that this skinnier side goes against the pipe. So when you assemble them, make sure they look like that. Some guys like to slide these clamps on as they're putting the exhaust together. I always do it like this and then just put the clamps on afterwards. And I start at the front and I do all these clamps, that clamp, and then that one back there. And then once that's all done, I come back up here and then I tighten the V-band clamp right up there. That's just the way I do it. You can tighten your exhaust however you want. All right, V-band clamp up there is tight. Got this one tight, 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 and the last one we got tight. Feels really good. There's no rattles. Make sure it's not hitting that heat shield or anything. Now you can start the truck and check it for exhaust leaks. And if there's no exhaust leaks, you're good to go. If you do have an exhaust leak, most likely you just need to either adjust position of a clamp or tighten it up a little bit. But yeah, we're gonna fire this thing up at the end of the video. But now we're gonna move on to the EGR. But just a really quick ad for myself. If these videos help you out and you find them useful and you wanna show a little more support, go to darkirondiesel.com. I got hats, hoodies, I got merch, stickers, the usual stuff. If you buy something, it means a lot to me and it really helps me out. But anyways, we're moving on to the EGR. So like I said before, if you don't want to, you technically don't have to remove the EGR, but you must unplug this plug, that plug, and then your throttle valve is this thing right here. It's on the kind of back side of it. You have to unplug those four things. But we're gonna physically remove this EGR. So the first thing we're gonna do is take this cover off. Just take those four bolts out, pull the dipstick, and you can remove it. Now we're gonna take this crossover tube out. So there's two V-band clamps you're gonna disconnect, and then there's one tricky little 8mm bolt underneath there. Now you can take the four 10mm bolts out of this EGR valve and remove it. Look at how gross it is in there. That's why we do this. All that exhaust going back into your engine is not good. But anyways, these gaskets here, we need to scrape them off. So I usually just use a razor blade and scrape them off nice and clean, and use a vacuum or something just to suck out any gasket material that goes into your intake horn. Now grab this blocker plate, and there should be a couple O-rings in the kit. Just put the O-rings where they go in there, and we're gonna put this blocker plate on with these Allen head bolts. All right, we got this blocker plate on. Now we're gonna go to this side and we're gonna actually remove this air intake pipe. There's 2 hose clamps for it. You'll have to undo this 10mm bolt here and then take this clamp off, and this is all gonna come out with it. There it is. Obviously, we're gonna reinstall this when we're done. Take these 2 10mm nuts off and remove this heat shield. Now there's another heat shield right here. There's a 10mm nut and then 2 8mm bolts, and just to take this little heat shield off. This is the heat shield I'm talking about. Now we're gonna move this piece all together. So there's 4 10mm bolts that hold this side on. Take all 3 of these 10mm bolts out right there. Then there's 2 right there, and then we're gonna pull this thing off. You can discard this gasket and then pull this whole thing off just like that. I get some penetrating fluid and spray that bolt and that one in there. And then also, if you can get to the back, there's one there. And then spray that one too, just like that. Now take this V-band clamp off, just get it loose like that. Now grab a 15mm socket and remove this nut. Then for the nut on the right, I use a 15mm flex head ratchet wrench, and I put it on there. And then I actually use a big pry bar, and I get the pry bar in there and I pry the wrench to the side, as you can see here. And that's, I use 2 hands, but that's how I loosen that one. I use the ratchet wrench with a flex head, and then I pry it with a pry bar. Then you can remove this from the truck. Now make sure you still have the gasket here, and we'll put the blocker plate on. So this smaller blocker plate is the one we're gonna use there. Now this likely won't happen to you, but if you see this stud, see the threads got all mashed up when I pulled the nut off? And I actually started threading this stud out when I was removing the nut. So I don't wanna use that stud anymore. So I'm gonna heat this up with a torch right there, and I'm gonna extract that stud. And I have a new stud and a new nut right here. I'm gonna use these instead. Like I said, you probably won't have to do that, but I'm just gonna quickly get that done. So again, make sure you still have that gasket in there, and then you can put on this new blocker plate. Now the kit doesn't come with these, but I recommend getting some 3/8 washers and just put them on there. Sometimes I find that the threads don't go high enough with the blocker plates, and then you bottom out on the thread without actually securing the blocker plate. That's why I like to use a couple washers. But then get the nuts you took off and tighten this guy down. Now we're gonna take this EGR cooler out. So there's 4 10mm bolts, and this one has a nut as well for the dipstick, so remove those. All right, we got those 4 out. Now there's just those 2 at the back. They're the same as these ones right here that we took out. They're just at the back of the EGR cooler. I use this long 1/2-inch ratchet with a 15mm socket and a little extension. And I just put it back in there, and that's how I loosen them. So I got the nut off that side back there, as you can see. And then on the other side, the stud actually broke, which has never happened to me before. It's very rare that that would happen. So I'm gonna have to deal with that once we get this EGR cooler out. But loosen this rad cap slowly to relieve any pressure in the cooling system. And then you're going to grab a flathead or a pry bar and pop this coolant line up. It's gonna leak a little bit of coolant, that's totally fine. It's not gonna leak very much. Then you're gonna lift the back of the cooler off those studs, and you might need another pry bar to just pry the cooler out of this standpipe here. And then once you have it out, like as you can see right now, the cooler's loose. Like that. So pop that line off, pop it out of there, and then remove the cooler from the truck. This EGR cooler will be full of coolant, so just try to keep it at a little bit of an angle when you pull it out, and then go dump the coolant out into a pail. There, we got the cooler out. As you can see, that stud broke, which is super rare, almost never happens. There might be enough thread there though that I don't need to replace the stud. I guess we'll see. But now we're gonna take this bracket out. So there's 2 13mm bolts in there. Take those out and then remove this bracket. There we go. Now grab this blocker plate and just make sure you tighten this little plug in the middle there. Tighten it up really good before we install it. Now again, make sure the gasket is still on there, and then we're gonna install this blocker plate with that plug facing up. Just like that. And I don't know if I'm gonna have enough threads there. I guess we'll see. And again, you probably have 2 good studs, so I would use 2 3/8 washers and then put the nuts that you took off and then tighten it down. All right, I did end up changing that stud out. So make sure you have your gasket on there, and then you can put your blocker plate on and tighten it down. Now grab a 13mm socket and take this exhaust manifold stud out. Grab this long bolt, and I always flip the nut around to be like that. And then you're just gonna thread this in and tighten it into that open exhaust manifold stud. Now grab this plug, and I put some Vaseline around the O-ring so it goes in a little bit easier. It can be very tight, but we need to insert it into here. And if you're really struggling with getting this in, you can get an O-ring kit at any hardware store, and you could put one size smaller O-ring on there and it shouldn't leak or anything. Now you can grab this bracket, and this will actually slide into that slot right there, just like that. Then you can grab this bolt from the kit and you can insert it into here, and it tightens into this bolt that we previously put in. Just make sure that this bracket is slid all the way back to keep this plug inside that standpipe all the way. Now we're gonna put a bolt and a nut through here, and we should be able to squeeze one through there as well. Here's the hardware that comes in the kit. And just like that, we got those nice and tight, and this is solid. That's not going anywhere. Now grab this little bolt, nut, and lock washer for the dipstick. And we wanna bolt this up right there. Now I use 2 hands for this, but I find sometimes you have to grab this with some pliers and actually bend this bracket this way just a little bit, just to get it to line up better, because see right there, it doesn't want to quite line up. So I just bend this bracket forward a little bit and then bolt her up. Just like that, nice and solid. I'll grab this hose, put the hose clamps on it, and I also put some Vaseline in here so it slides on easier. And I just put it right over top of that green O-ring, and then you just slide it right on here and connect it up and tighten it up. All right, we got this hose on. Now we're gonna go ahead and put this air intake pipe back in. Once this is in, we gotta hook this hose back up. Now see, it's not quite long enough like that, so I usually take this hose clamp off, and I actually use a pick to loosen this up, and I slide this hose this way a little bit, put the hose clamp back on, and then it reaches better. Just like that, you can kind of see how much I slid it over. Now it's on. I don't bolt this up or nothing, I just leave it like that. But that should be it. You can zip tie this sensor out of the way, zip tie these ones out of the way, and then this throttle valve, you know, the one that's down there, just make sure it's neat and out of the way. Make sure that throttle valve is unplugged. So that's what it should look like when you're all done. Make sure the rad cap is tightened up. You got everything tight, triple check everything. You can run it, check it for leaks. You shouldn't have to add any coolant, but check the level just in case. Some guys will sometimes hear a squealing noise under boost pressure. If you hear that, just make sure that these blocker plates are tight. Usually that's all it is. Again, this kit is linked in the description. Check it out for yourself. If you want to support the channel, check out the merch at darkirondiesel.com. Follow me on Instagram, and thank you for watching. I hope to see you again soon.
I can't take no loss. I don't even know what it costs. I hit the ground, then it go